guys, it's Kate here. Welcome to episode 83 of the Funding Love podcast and happy Halloween. We are so grateful you have tuned in, whether it be your first time or your 50th time. We love that you have joined our Funding Love community. On today's episode, it is just Mal and I. We have a conversation about how so often different corners of the adoption triad can easily be labeled as heroes or villains. And like many labels, these words are thrown around way too easily and often do not hold any truth. I hope you all enjoyed this convo as Mal and I try to break it down. Thanks for tuning in. Take a listen.
Happy Halloween. It is October 31st, and we are here for episode 83. How are you doing, Caitlin?
Hey, I'm good. Happy Halloween to you, too.
Yes. So what are your plans for this Halloween?
Oh gosh. With having a 3-year-old, it's just trick-or-treating, dressing up as Tinkerbell. Not me.
Oh, she's going to be Tinkerbell?
Yes, she's going to be. We went through probably 10 to 15 ideas over the last month and a half, but we're down to Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell or Mulan, but I think it's going to be Tinkerbell. She really wanted to be Mulan for a minute there.
Yes.
So anyways, so we'll do that. And then we go to one of our really good friends' house. They live in a really great neighborhood where we can walk safely on the sidewalks. So we'll do trick-or-treating there. And then that's it. I like Halloween, but it's not one of those days that I like go all out for. You know what I mean? I don't. Like, I like the harvest. I like the pumpkins. I like the, pumpkin spice. But we don't necessarily have grand plans. What about you guys?
Yes, so similar. We are in Florida for Halloween, and so just gonna get dressed up in whatever the kids have and do a little trick-or-treating.
Yeah.
We had our Georgia house decorated for Halloween, but then right before we came down to Florida, we switched everything over to Christmas because when we went back, we knew we wanted it to be full on Christmas, and we don't have a lot of Halloween down here, so, same for us. It's not a big deal. We don't mind Halloween. But it's not a holiday that I get super excited about. Honestly, it seems a little silly to me. The buying cheap candy so that you can give out cheap candy so your kids can come back with the same exact cheap candy, and then I just donate that.
That's it.
It all seems silly.
Yeah. So, Libby's dressing up, and Adam I don't know what he's decided fully, whether he was going to get a costume. I actually don't even know if he did. But are you dressing up or just your kiddos?
No, won't be dressing up this year. Last year, we did a big, family theme, and we all dressed up. That was fun. But, to do that consecutive years in a row, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of brain power and energy to think about what are we going to do? Do we have to buy them? Do we have what we need? All of the things. It's expensive. It really is. It is so expensive to buy these Halloween costumes. And I guess if it's your thing and you love it and that is just what brings you joy, then that's worth it. For me, I'm once every few years we can go all out, and then we kind of just do the bare minimum the rest of the years. But as a kid, now I remember as a kid absolutely loving Halloween. What about you? Did you like it as a kid?
Well, yes, I did. I guess, it's one of those holidays I didn't look forward to for a long time. It was just oh, it's Halloween. Great. And then we would, plan the week of whatever, and then run around in the neighborhood across the street with our pillowcases as our, Halloween or our candy holder. Did you guys do that? I don't know why.
Yes. And we would fill up that pillowcase.
What's the deal with pillowcases?
I don't know.
Nobody does that nowadays, I don't think.
No.
I don't know what the deal with.
Every now and then, a teenager will come to the door with a pillowcase.
Okay. I thought it was I thought it was I don't know. I realized, gosh, that was weird. We ran with pillowcases. Anyways, we run around with our pillowcases, fill it up with a whole bunch of junk and come back. But, I liked it as a kid. Probably the same as I feel about it now. Of course, who doesn't love candy as a kid, but.
Right. The candy. And as a kid, I really did enjoy the dressing up. I never really got into the spooky side of Halloween, but I think the theatrics in me always loved deciding who I was going to dress up as. And it was usually my favorite character of the moment. I was Dorothy twice, and, the Disney princesses. And when you were growing up, did you get into the spooky side? What was a common costume for you?
You want to know, my common costumes were whatever my brothers were the few years before. So it was just a bunch of hand-me-downs. When I was a little girl, my mom, I think, did a mini costume, a Raggedy Ann. She made all those cute little ones. But as I got older, it was literally just my brother's hand-me-down. So I think one year I was a mad scientist. Because that's what we had. We had like a like a lab coat. So then we all shared the wig and just passed down through all the kids, and then that's just how it was. Yeah, I don't remember. I think maybe one year, like me and my friends went as like the what do you call it? Like the Scarecrow, Dorothy, all of those from the Wizard of Oz. So
yes.
But yeah, I was more into cute than I was spooky, to be honest. I mean, and I was. What about you? Like when it comes to like hero or villain, what was your thing?
Yeah, definitely the heroes.
Me too. I mean, like, I never wanted to be the villain.
Yeah. It's funny because it's funny to see what comes out in your kids' personalities because my kids sometimes like to dress up as a villain. Like we've had a Grim Reaper one year.
Oh, my word.
Lorelai, my daughter, actually one year wanted to be the bride from Haunted Mansion. So she got like we had an old dress that she wore in a wedding as like a flower girl. So it was white. And we just put a veil on her and she wanted to make her face spooky. I was like, don't you want to be like a pretty bride? She's like, no, I want to be the bride from Haunted Mansion. And then my son cut out like an axe out of cardboard and painted it silver. So she had her,
little axe
till
at the end.
Death do us part.
Yeah,
yes.
She's like, chop. Oh my gosh. That is so funny.
So she's
creative.
into the spooky. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we stick to, at least so far, Libby's only 3. So the Disney is, Disney people really is all. What was she? Moana, Maribel, and then Tinkerbell. So there you go. And what was she? Oh, Snow White when she was a little baby, because she would look like a little Snow White. But
she does look like a little Snow White.
Basically, Disney princesses over on this side of town. So
yes.
Oh,
yes.
man. I mean, it's fun though.
Speaking of heroes and villains, we did want to have an episode kind of tied into Halloween, but also address this common misconception or even this common conversation surrounding this topic within the adoption community as well of heroes and villains.
Yeah.
I feel like we hear that a lot, those terms used within
the triad,
the adoption community.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because, now that we're in this community for some years, it's funny to think that that still is the case. But I guess, just like we always say, ignorance and lack of education can make somebody feel like the hero and then somebody like the villain. Like somebody had to do something wrong and somebody has to fix the mess. Like that's just the way that it's portrayed. But like what are your initial thoughts on that? When someone like says that in reference to adoption, hero or villain?
Yeah, I think that the common one that gets thrown around the most is that the adoptive families are the heroes and the birth moms are the villains. Like when we had Allison on and she was talking about being an adoptee and an adoptive mom, like the different responses that she gets from people when she says, I'm an adoptee, they kind of give her a different response than when she says, oh, and I'm an adoptive mom. Then they're like, oh, what a great thing you did. Yes. Outside people just see adoptive parents as what a great thing you did, which I think feeds that savior complex that people talk about.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think, and I would never want to pigeonhole all adoptive families in saying that adoptive families take that on themselves. I think a lot of it is outside looking in. Would you say?
It is. Yeah, I would say mostly. Yes, I would say mostly that is the case. I do though think there are some people who maybe just haven't checked their heart enough and go into the process feeling like I'm going to do this to save a child, which I don't even want to like cast a blame and say that like that. I don't know. Once again, it's ignorance. It's not being in the community. It's not knowing everybody's story. It's not knowing the perspectives from all sides. But I do think for the most part, it is that hero mentality that is kind of cast upon the adoptive family, not necessarily for any real truth other than just people not knowing true stories, not knowing the truth of things. But yeah, adoption is so much more complex than an adoptive family coming in and saving the day and rescuing a child from the horrific life that they could have had. You know what I mean? It's way more complex than just that.
It absolutely is, because that narrative puts the birth family and the birth mom specifically in that villain seat, which is absolutely untrue. And especially, I would say, like the narrative, I know that things are, like we said, shifting in the last few years to where things are changing, but especially years ago, birth moms were just looked at as like, well, if they're going to do that, then they can just move on. They didn't even love their baby, you know. They must be all of the things that people assume about birth moms, all the stigmas that come out that make them kind of like the villain in the story, and it's just so untrue. We would like to debunk that
It
myth.
is, and you know, I mean, and like, and I don't even know if this is a thought that came to my head, is that I've even heard just all of these things about birth mom said, like, well, she knows how to get pregnant, so why'd she get pregnant if she couldn't take care of it? Like those sort of
Wow.
like, well, you know, she knows how to get pregnant, so like, you know, like those sort of things of like, well, your fault kind of thing,
Right?
And when they're when we all know that there's more to it than just that.
Always more to it.
Always more to it. So that, and those mentalities and those comments and that narrative is a huge part of why the villain role is often given to the birth mom and the birth family. You know, I feel that way. But yeah, I mean.
But then I've also seen the script flipped the complete other way too. So I would like to kind of play the devil's advocate and flip it around to where I've also seen people say, oh, well, she's just so brave. And she did such a bold and kind thing for the birth mom, like attempting to make them look like the hero. Like, you were so unworthy of raising this baby that you did the right thing by sacrificing your, you know, relationship with your child or parenting your child to do what was best. And I'm not saying that that's completely false, but it is like exaggerated, overcompensating and putting them in a hero role where it's kind of like, what if you just supported her and empowered her to parent instead of saying that the only brave and bold and good thing to do to make yourself a hero would be to place them with an adoptive family.
Right.
And then on the flip side, I have also heard the angry and awful things that people can say to adoptive families for even wanting to adopt at all. Oh, you just want to take a baby from someone. Oh, you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. You just, you know, and you're not considering other people's feelings. All you want is a baby. Yeah. Which I know can absolutely happen and does happen as well. But it's been interesting to see kind of the scripts flip a bit in those two, and that role reversal of sometimes people will make the birth moms out to be this hero, and then the adoptive families are the villains for even wanting to pursue the adoption process at all. They're like participating in adoptee stories of trauma and, you know, all of that stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a good point that you brought up about, you know, the conversations that people can have with women who are have an unplanned pregnancy and are still carrying the baby. Like Brittany. Remember when we had Brittany on, and Brittany was talking about, if I would have had a Brittany, somebody in my corner saying, you can do this, I'm going to help you, and I'm going to help you parent, instead of saying like, this is going to be the best thing for you. This is the best, like you were saying, like, this is the best thing. You're so brave for doing this, and like painting this hero picture that they can somehow live up to. And then they place the child, and that hero feeling is nowhere to be found.
Is not there.
Instead of, like you said, that empowering of like, this is hard, this sucks, but we're going to help you parent because I know you can, you know, those sort of things.
Right.
If that's the desire of this woman is all
right.
Of that.
It's like sometimes that hero mentality is to justify the actions of other people.
Yes.
The hero mentality is to convince them that placing their child is the best thing, because that might not be what they want, but whoever else, whether it's their parents or the adoption agency, it's what they want. So they put forward this hero mentality for a birth mom in order to, dare I say, like coerce her into, you know, going through with the adoption plan.
Also, I feel like for, like we were saying, adoptive to the outside world, adoptive families feel like the heroes, and the birth moms often the villains. Is like the natural way that it goes. But we have heard many stories from birth moms who were promised things by adoptive families when they were making an adoption plan. The child was placed, and then sayonara, that adoptive family cut ties with this birth mom.
Right. Didn't keep their word.
So who's the hero and villain there? Right?
Right.
Like if you're saying that adoptive family now, to me, could fill that villain slot, if we're going to air quotes villain slot. And then
Absolutely.
And this birth mom made this brave decision and is now left with this nothing. Right. So it is, yeah, I mean, it really could be in all ways. All sides could fill the roles, but I
agree.
I feel like often that's why like birth parents can sometimes feel offended when adoptive families are telling their stories of like, I was called to adopt and this is what I meant to do. Whether that's the truth or not, I would say that that's my story. Like I do feel like from a young age that this was my purpose, this was my direction, that I truly feel in my heart. But that doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, I'm hoping there's a young woman out there who gets pregnant unexpectedly and then I'm going to save the day. But that's how that narrative can be offensive to these birth parents. We're like, oh, great. So you're just saying you were called to adoption so that I could live this shame my whole life? You know,
so I'm called to be in a vulnerable position, or sometimes in a position where I was abused, or, you know, all these different scenarios. Oh, you're saying that was meant to be my story so that your story could be that you're called to adoption. It does sound like offensive when you say it that way.
It's so complicated.
You can see
how
how someone would take it that way. Yes.
And
I mean, if anything, this narrative of hero and villain within adoption, and this is not something we're making up. Like, we've sat across from adoptive families that have spoken about this narrative and what the things people have said to them, and we have sat across the table from birth moms that have brought up this narrative and the things that were spoken to them. We're not making this up. This is something that is talked about and debated, and I think that ultimately it just reveals how messy and complex adoption is. So anyone going into it on both sides of you know, those corners, the birth families and the adoptive families, you have to educate yourself because it is not as simple of a narrative as it's always initially like presented to be. It is so messy and complex. And I think it's constantly shifting and changing. And you just kind of have to take this narrative of hero and adoption and like throw in the trash can.
Right. No, you do. Yeah, we
have to really just slay it. Just kill it and get rid of it. And stop trying to finger point who's the villain in the story and who was the hero that came in and saved the day.
Right, because we just gave how many examples on all sides of who could be labeled the hero or the villain, depending on perspective, depending on your story, depending on what avenue you took or how you got there or whatever. So yeah, just throw it all right in the trash. But let me ask you this, because when it comes to, let's just go back to the outside world looking in, and the hero card is often given to white Christian adoptive parents. Let me ask your opinion on that. When essentially that's what we are, but I do feel like often when I don't know what I'm trying to say is because often they can be labeled the hero for coming in and saving the day. When really a lot of them just say, this is the Holy Spirit leading me. How do you feel about like that narrative? Because that's a lot of people's stories, and that is truth for them, and it is real. But I feel like what we were just talking about, that could sometimes feel like really offensive.
Yeah, I agree. When we are honest about our desires, when we are honest about the things that we feel called and in our spirit, when we're honest with that, to then hear that makes us the villain is hard. As though we were wishing for someone else. But I don't think that's the case. Like you said, I never went into adoption wishing that a woman would find herself in an unplanned pregnancy so that I could have her baby. That was never the intention. But that also is assuming that adoptive families created the situation and that, you know, that adoption wasn't a need in the first place.
Right.
And so I think it's one of those things where we knew that this was already happening and that there is actually a lot of need in some situations. And we have always felt called that would be something we would step into. Not that we were trying to create a situation. We were just saying, I've always felt called to step into a situation that was already there.
No, it's true. I mean, because I know what you're saying, because as believers, we know that this is, let's just say, a broken world, and adoption exists in this broken world. And for those who are called to that, to be stewards of their time, of their energies, of whatever, are truly stepping in to a need that they know exists overall on a broad scale, not for a particular person. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I think that the church has just done a really poor job talking about adoption. And I can see where people would be burned by Christians adopting because it has kind of perpetuated this hero narrative. And then you have people that say, oh, we're called to care for the widows and orphans.
Yeah.
And they use that verse, which we've kind of talked about this, how you have to read the Bible in context,
right?
And that anybody can take any verse out of the Bible and like justify their actions.
Yeah.
And I think that's wrong because we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't take verses from the Bible out of context to justify the things and the choices we're making. We need to live by the word and what it means and use it as a direction and a guide and to learn about the character of God and what he wants for our lives. So I just think that, I think that there is some gaps there, and I can see why people would have been hurt or burned by the church.
Yeah.
And then in that carry like an overall, I don't want to say prejudice, but, hostility in their spirit towards white Christians that just want to adopt babies and save people.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
and assume that. What are your thoughts on that?
No, and I know what you're saying is that like when people tie in a Bible verse for the reason that they did adopt, or saying that Bible verse is the reason they did adopt, like pulling out one verse and saying, this is why we adopted, because, God adopted us, and so I'm going to adopt a child. And although there is a verse that says that, like, I don't know if that should be your core reason to adopt. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but when somebody can throw that on an Instagram post and say, this, holding a pretty baby, I don't know. That just makes me uncomfortable, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, it kind of puts Christians or that family, if you're really thinking about it, kind of puts that family saying, oh, we're like God.
Yeah.
God adopted me, so I'm going to adopt this baby, and I'm going to be like God for this baby. It kind of sounds weird when you actually say it and like spell it out.
Yeah.
I get the sentiment behind it.
Of course. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we can also say that God adopting us into his spiritual family and becoming a Christian is so different than raising a human child outside of their biological family.
Yes. 100%. I completely agree. And I know we're being like super critical right now, and there's probably people listening who maybe are just like, what the heck are they talking about? But I really do feel and this is honestly not hating on anybody, because like we were saying, I do believe most people's hearts are in the right place. And even if you do put a verse up, I understand where your heart is, because you are being moved by the Spirit and it put you in this, and you're so grateful to have been adopted into God's spiritual family, and you feel that love and you want to give that love. So I understand where all of these are coming from. I just think you got to step back once again and gain other perspectives, because there are other sides to this, and it's not that simple of just saying,
correct.
Because then that is, therefore, the reason there is a hero and villain side. Those sort of things is where that divide comes for many people who aren't educated on on it, you know? So I really don't mean to be hypercritical. We don't mean to be hypercritical, but
No.
I do think that this is honestly good stuff for people to just to be aware of and
just kind of think about. I mean, we're not saying our
empathy.
opinions.
Yes.
We're not even saying our opinions are right.
Right.
We are just two adoptive moms having a conversation about this repeated theme within the adoption community. And we've already said way back in the first few episodes, we're going to get it wrong. We're going to say things that might be offensive to someone. We're going to, say things maybe not the way we intended or meant them. However, we're not going to be afraid to talk about the messy stuff either. And I think this is just one of those really messy things.
Mm-hmm. No, it is.
And at the end of the day, it never feels good to be called the villain.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes maybe what you're saying or what you're thinking, your thought processes or your lack of education, you might be sitting in that villain seat.
Yeah.
And maybe all it takes is just learning a little bit, listening to a different perspective, and readjusting not even your plans. I'm not saying, oh, now change your reason to adopt. Oh, now never place a baby. I'm saying just go into it with the different mindset and a different perspective and just continue to educate yourself on all corners of the adoption triad.
Yeah. And I think I told you this. Maybe I didn't even tell you this, but when we were in the adoption process for Libby, one of my family members said to me when we were announcing that, we're going to start the adoption process, they said, oh, just because you want to be the noble one and be the hero. And I was like,
Oh my.
And I can't even tell you how much that hurt my heart. But I also now, honestly, having this conversation makes me think well, how was I presenting myself? Maybe I was presenting myself in that way of oh, you're just trying to be the hero, when by no means was I. This was literally a long journey for my husband and I to get to this point. It wasn't definitely not a flippant decision. But I mean, that clearly that person in my family had that viewpoint already.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I was like, shoot, was I coming across in that way of I don't know. Anyways, it is just maybe how you're coming across. But I don't even know if I've ever told you that story. Maybe I have. But
I don't think you have.
It did hurt my feelings. I was like, gosh, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
Ouch. But it is real. That's where you're saying earlier, these are real. This hero villain thing we're not making up. It's real. So
yeah. And I think it's always good to look in the mirror and it's really hard and it can be really painful to look in the mirror and try to see something that you don't like about yourself. Mm-hmm. But that's what helps you grow. It's what helps you grow. Yeah. And growth is good. And so when you know better, you do better, and then it gets better.
Yeah.
So I think that that's what we should always be working towards as well, even if we have to go through that kind of painful refinement process.
No, it's true. I mean, there are many times we've had guests on this podcast where they've said things and I'm like, ooh, that's a gut check for me.
Sure.
Of shoot, maybe I've thought that or said that and should not have. But
right.
I do want to bring up the whole birth mom being the villain thing. Because we've interacted with so many birth moms now through Funding Love and over our time on the podcast. And, the Hallmark movie version of the birth mom, of the drug addict, maybe the teen, or she's in jail, so she can't parent, and left her child and didn't, had her baby and didn't even care. I just want to say none of that is true. I just want to put that out there from you and I saying this. And I know we've had so many birth moms share their stories, but just birth moms love their children.
Yeah.
Birth moms miss their children. They long for their children. It is not a say peace out, sayonara, and that's it for them. This is it's more than that. And I just want to help debunk that a bit from when we're talking about the hero villain side. They certainly are not the villains. No one's the villain here. And we've said that a lot on this episode. So I just do want to clarify that those Hallmark stories are rarely true. Rarely true. So, the women who are birth moms who have come on our podcast are just women. They are moms. They love their children just as much as any other mom. So I just had to say that because I don't want that to be left open-ended of like, oh, they're the villain, but I don't have a reason why they, you know what I mean, a reason to explain away. But
right. No, but I think that another thing I would like to talk about is where does all of this leave the adoptee? Because we've gone back and forth with the adoptive family and the birth family, but we haven't really touched on the adoptee because just like in most other occasions, they just kind of get left out. They just kind of aren't talked about. Again, they don't have a voice.
Yes.
Correct. Once again, they don't have a voice. And they're not even given any sort of role other than maybe sometimes the vulnerable one that needs saving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That poor little baby that needed saving is their story. Is they're the subject.
Right.
They're the
which
subject.
Is not even, like we said, which is not even always true. It's probably rarely true.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that even entertaining this hero versus villain idea puts an adoptee in another sit down, be quiet. You're just the one we're all trying to save here. Be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of role, which is also not where they should be.
Mm-hmm. You were the poor little one that needed saving. Yeah, absolutely. That definitely is the poor view that, it's true. I mean, it's all just so messy and complex and layers,
Mm-hmm.
It really is because, that is, I don't know who said it on on our recent episodes, but nobody asked the adoptee their opinion.
Mm-mm.
No.
Or
what they wanted. Where
they
they
don't
wanted
get
to live,
say
who they wanted their family to be.
With.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. So you're right. This whole hero villain thing needs to go out the window because it's just. But, I mean, let's wrap it up. Ultimately, Mal, tell us where we're going to end this one here.
I mean, I think ultimately, after we toss the hero villain narrative into the trash where it belongs, we all know that it is better when we come together.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to tear down this wall that exists, this wall of awkwardness or fear or judgment that stands between the birth moms and the adoptive family, the birth families and the adopted families. We need to tear that down because we are all better together. And when we come together, whatever that open relationship looks like, whether, it's a little bit open or a lot of bit open, we're better together. And that ultimately is what's best for the adoptee, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are all broken and healing people.
Yes.
Neither side needs more healing than the other. It really is just, we're all better together in this, truly.
Yes. And it makes me think about the phrase, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
If you're the one that's sitting around trying to blame somebody for wherever you sit within this triad, maybe you're just hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're just hurting and you just need a little hug, some healing, some kindness, some compassion, some empathy, and to realize we do need each other. We need each other. Let's not tear each other down because we know that we're better together. Tearing each other down and tearing each other apart and causing the rift and the division to widen has never helped anything.
Mm-mm. No,
it's when we come together that it truly is healing.
It's healing. It feels better. It feels inspiring. You feel, it's better. No, well said. No, this is kind of a conversation, that we've kind of touched on a little bit here and there. I mean, little pieces throughout the, our time on having this podcast, but we've never really dedicated a whole episode to this. So I do love that we kind of went through this. It honestly was kind of fun to tie into Halloween.
Heroes, villains. For sure.
It reminds me of the Heroes, Villains, Survivor season.
Yes. I love that season.
We love Survivor. So the Heroes and Villains Survivor, that was one of my favorite seasons. I loved it.
No, that was a really good season.
Oh, it was so great. That's what it reminded me of when I was reading through this. Anyways, such a great episode. Always fun talking to you. But before we wrap, Mal, I'm going to ask you, since this is the Funding Love podcast, what are you loving right now?
You know what, Caitlin? Right now, I am loving Christmas. I know that it is Halloween, but I'm just in the Christmas spirit already. We went to a record store. We bought new Christmas records. We've been playing them. Something about good old soulful jazz or swing or, Frank Sinatra crooning out a Christmas song, Bing Crosby.
That's the best. Oh, yeah. Man. That's
Christmas. I'm kind of loving Christmas. I know it. Happy Halloween, everyone, but I'm ready for Christmas.
Happy Halloween. Ho, ho, ho.
Yes. How about you? What are you loving right now, Caitlin? What's giving you life?
What's giving me life? Well, right now I am sipping on some chai tea, decaf chai tea, but I'm into tea. Like I probably in my cupboard have like 8-9 different varieties. So I'm really into enjoying a cup of tea every night.
That's so fun.
Is not always what I've been. I've never always been a tea person, but my friend Becca and her husband got into tea like earlier this year, and she's like, "You got to do it." So I started buying them. But before you know it, I'm a tea lady too. I love it.
That's amazing. So I love my cup of tea at night as well. I'm usually a sleepy time girl. Yeah. I found a new one that I really like right now called Shut Eye Chai, and it's delicious. But I do have a cup of tea every night, but I'm pretty I don't switch it up. So you're going to have to send me some of your options because I'm typically just a sleepy time before bed kind of girl.
The beauty sleep one, I think you have that one, the butterfly.
No, I never tried it.
You never tried that one? No. I have an immunity one that has zinc in it that I do that if I'm feeling it. It's so many good ones. Yeah, so passion tea is a solid one. I don't like the ones with caffeine, to be honest with you, because this is always a nighttime routine to me. But anyways, I digress. I'm into tea, so I'm loving tea right now. I'm going to have, speaking of, Christmas, I'm going to have to go get me some Christmas teas, and then we'll be all set. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, hey, happy Halloween, but in our households, peace out Halloween, because it's Christmas. We're ready. Christmas. We're ready to move on. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. Oh, wow. This was a fun one. Love you, Mal. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Funding Love podcast. We are a crowd-funded nonprofit, which means that people like you can help make a lasting impact in the lives of adoptive families and birth moms. At Funding Love, we create post-adoption experiences that strengthen bonds, build community, and restore people. And when you partner with us, whether that is giving online, signing up to become a monthly donor, or simply buying merchandise from our shop, you are funding love.